You have taken your time to design your questionnaire, conduct interviews, and perform the tedious transcription process. Right now, you might be wondering, how will I analyze my interviews? After conducting a lot of research on this topic, I have found the most effective way to analyze interview transcripts is to follow a step-by-step approach popularized by Braun and Clarke in their scholarly article titled Using Thematic Analysis in Psychology. The main goal of Braun and Clarke article was to provide a step-by-step guide to help researchers conduct thematic analysis. The Braun and Clarke approach to thematic analysis is known as reflexive thematic analysis. The approach has continued to gain more prominence in scholarly research and has become even more refined. In this video, we are going to conduct a reflexive thematic analysis together. We're going to use NVivo 14. We are going to go from having interview transcripts such as this to having a well-organized data analysis report like this. This will all be possible after conducting the reflexive thematic analysis process. Before I forget, my name is Bernard Mugo from Surviving Research. Make sure you check the description for links to the complete data analysis report, resources, and references after completing the reflexive thematic analysis process. There are 6 main steps in conducting a reflexive thematic analysis, including 1. Familiarization with the data, 2. Generating initial codes, 3. Generating themes, 4. Reviewing potential themes, 5. Defining and naming themes, and 6. Producing the report. For this video, we are going to use an example topic of young people identity and the media, a study of conceptions of self-identity among the youth in Southern England. For my study, I have 6 interview transcripts that I'm going to analyze using the reflexive thematic analysis approach. The first thing I'm going to do is to create a new project. This is the button to create a new project in NVivo, and these are my previous projects. So I create a new project and call this Young People Identity and the Media Tutorial. Then I click Next. Then I click on Create Project. So NVivo has created my project. So the first thing I'm going to do when I open NVivo is to go to Files section and create a new folder and call this Interview Transcripts. Then I click OK. So you can see we have created a new folder called Interview Transcripts where we are going to put all our interviews. I open every folder, I drag and drop into the interview transcripts because I've already selected this folder. Again, this is the folder containing the interviews. I go to this folder containing the interview transcripts. I control, select both of them, drag, drop. I do the same for the third set of interview transcripts. I drag and drop them. Now, you will notice that I combined all the interview transcripts despite having the participants coming from 3 schools. That is Cantel School, Kelmscott School, and Millbrook Community School. But I will capture this data in another document called the classification sheet. So let's go to this folder I have here. I want you to check out this folder I have here and check out this Excel sheet I made that has demographic information. Most of the time when you're conducting interviews, you will record some demographic information about your participants. For example, you can record their name, which might not be their real name. This can be made up names to protect the privacy of your interview participants. Then you can have the age. For example, here you can see the different ages of my participants. You can have the gender, which includes whether the participants identify as male or female, and in this case I have the school to differentiate the different schools which participants go to. For example, Karen, who is 14 years and female, goes to Kelmscott School. Now you can create such a table to contain what we call attributes in NVivo. This is the demographic information about your interview participants. So I'm going to import this demographic information into NVivo. Now this is how we are going to import our classification or our demographic demographic information into NVivo. So the demographic information related to each of our participants. Go to import classification and import classification sheet. So I click on browse. This is where I have my demographic information. It's in Excel format. I click open and then I click on next. I click on next. Then NVivo is asking me whether I want to classify as file classification or case classification. I want to classify as case classification because we are importing attributes for each of our participants. Attributes is the same as demographic information. This is the name, age, and gender, and also in our case we have the school that each interviewed participant attends. So case classification, then I click on next. Then I want to select as names and then I want to click next. I don't want to change anything here, so I click finish and let's see what happens. You can see there's a table that pops up here, which is the table that has our demographic information. That means NVivo has matched our demographic information from the Excel sheet with each of our participants here. If you go down on NVivo and click on the cases area and go to, you can see the different cases that have been created from our demographic information. And you can also, if you click on the case classifications area and you click on name, you can see the different cases that we have created. For example, if you click on the plus sign here, we can see David is 13 years and is male and goes to Millbrook Community School. So if we go back and check our demographic information from the Excel sheet, you can see David 13 male goes to Millbrook Community School. Let's get back to NVivo. David 13 male goes to Millbrook Community School. So that is the easiest way of importing your attributes or demographic information into NVivo. You use the import function, classifications, and then you import your classification sheet, which is normally the Excel sheet containing your demographic information. Now that I have added the demographic information or the attributes information of my interview participants, I can begin the first step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is familiarization. So this step will basically involve going through each and every interview transcripts. I double click each interview transcript to open it here. I'm going to go through all of the interview transcripts. Remember, familiarization is not skimming. You need to read like you would read a book and take time to understand your interview transcripts. When conducting reflexive thematic analysis, the process of familiarization begins when you are transcribing your interview transcript. As you transcribe your interview transcripts, you will familiarize yourself with such transcripts. So after familiarizing with all the interview transcripts, we are going to go to the second step of reflexive thematic analysis. The second step of reflexive thematic analysis is generating initial codes. Let's go through the interviews and generate some codes because I have already familiarized with all my interview transcripts. I want to expand here and click on the codes section in NVivo. You right click on the code section, then you select new folder and call this initial codes and click OK. So you can see we have created a folder called initial codes here where we are going to have our initial codes. This interview transcript belongs to David, age 13, who is male. I represents interviewer. This study is about young people, identity, and the media, a study of conceptions of self-identity among youth in southern England. The interviewer says, okay. Then David says, I've got a picture of Tony Blair because he's like all powerful like me. So we can code this area. To code, we just highlight the sentence and we can drag it and drop it here and call this powerful. So we give that sentence or we assign the code powerful to that sentence, and you can see this is our first initial code. Remember, we are storing this in the initial code folder. In what way do you think you are powerful? That's the interviewer. My voice, I'm very opinionated. So we can also code this sentence as opinionated. This is the self-perception of this interviewee who is called David. So we can see that we have come up with two very clear codes for David.
Let me interrupt this video for a minute and inform you of my services. My first type of service that I offer is consulting for anything related to qualitative data analysis using NVivo.
You hop on a video call with me through Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and I will help you become a pro with NVivo in a few hours. I also provide a done-for-you data analysis service. I do the manual coding and provide a data analysis report with the necessary visuals. Some kind of visuals I do include tables, hierarchy charts, matrix tables, and the framework matrix. Email or message me right now, details in the description.
I want to move to another interview. If I was doing this in real time, which I'm going to go and do, so that I can come with all the codes, I would go until the end of David's transcript. But for now, let's move to Karen also, and we go to initial codes and let's see. So this is Karen, 14 female interviewer. Do you want to just go through your collage, how I see myself, and explain what pictures you've used and why you've used them? The crossword is I think I'm intelligent, and the Alex Ferguson one because he demands a lot from the players to show that I'm demanding. So you can see Karen here up to this place. We can say intelligent as a code, intelligent. Then in the Alex Ferguson one, because he demands a lot from players to show that I'm demanding. So she's demanding, that's a code. So you can see we already have 4 codes here. Let me drag this for you to see. We have powerful, opinionated, intelligent, and demanding. Let's put in more codes here for Karen. So the Paris Hilton one, because I can imagine her to be quite selfish. We can give her the code selfish. Yeah, so the font that says I talk a lot. So this sentence of I talk a lot, we can code it as talkative. So this is how you code. Remember, there are 2 approaches to coding. We have semantic, where we just take the open or the shallow meaning or the clear meaning. For example, yeah, so the font says that I talk a lot. That I think is a bit semantic approach to coding. Then we have latent approach to coding, where we look for the deeper meaning. Most of my codes here are semantic, but as we go on, we'll see some examples of latent codes. So you can see I've already come up with so many codes. And the woman, image of a woman wearing a tiara. I like people to run around for me because I don't like to do a lot for myself. Here we can assign what I called a latent code. I don't like to do a lot for myself. So we can call Karen lazy. That's an example of a latent code, because there's nowhere Karen says she's lazy, but by reading the sentence we can get the deeper meaning. Like, I don't like to do a lot for myself infers or means that Karen is lazy. Right, what do you do about the DNG and the perfume? To show that I'm girly, and the biscuit is to show that I'm sweet. So to show that I'm girly, we can code that again with a latent code or a latent code. We call this feminine. And then, and the biscuit is to show that I'm sweet. We can code that using the semantic code, which is sweet. That's how you code your interview transcripts, and that's how you come up with the initial codes. So I'm going to go and take my time to generate all the initial codes, and then we can move to the next step. Now, I have taken my time to code all the interviews, and you can see I have developed a very extensive list of initial codes. You can see they are in the folder initial codes. If you check here, I have 41 initial codes. That was the second step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is generating initial codes. Let's move to the third step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is generating themes. Let's come up with themes from our different codes. I want to create a new folder in the codes section and call this initial themes. I'm putting a 2 because I had already done this. So initial themes 2. If you look at our codes here, you will notice that we can generate some kind of themes. If you look at the codes, a bit wild, above average, appreciative of ethnic culture, average, British ethnicity, calm, cheerful, demanding, different, emotional, fashionable, feminine. You can observe something. Like, these codes tell us there is an element of positive attributes and negative attributes, of positive traits and negative traits. For example, a bit wild is a negative trait. I go down there in the codes. Remember, we are in the initial codes. I create a new code. Let me call this positive traits, right? Then I want to create another code and call this negative traits, right? These two are not codes, they are themes. We are generating themes. Group of codes form a theme. So to generate themes, you first go through your codes, we read them through as we have done, and we have observed that we have positive and negative traits. So I want to assign each code into a theme of either positive or negative. A beat world is a negative trait, so we drag it and drop it into the negative traits. Then above average, it's a positive trait, so we drag that and put it in the positive traits. So that's the two themes we've created: positive traits, negative traits. Appreciative of ethnic culture, of course, that's positive, so we classify that under positive traits. We drag and drop. Average, that's negative, so we drag and put that in negative traits. British ethnicity, and I can also see something like identifies as Pakistani. I can also see something like English ethnicity, white ethnicity. So that's another theme of ethnicity. Remember, in reflexive thematic analysis, we get themes from codes and not themes first and then codes. No, we first do the initial coding, then we study the codes to see what they tell us or how they relate to each other, and then we develop themes and we generate the themes from the codes. So you can see I've generated another theme called ethnicity, and I'm going to drag and drop the British ethnicity in there. If I find ethnicity again, I'll drop it there. So let's look at this trait, calm. So this is a description. This is a positive trait. So again, I go down, I drop it on positive traits. Remember, now I have three themes. I have ethnicity, I have positive traits and negative traits. Cheerful is, of course, a positive trait. Indian ethnicity and English ethnicity and white ethnicity, I can select these three together, drag and drop them under my ethnicity theme. So I'm going to go through all these codes and I'm going to classify them under the three initial themes I have, that is ethnicity, positive traits, and negative traits. I have categorized, or I have generated my three main themes. Remember, first we had initial codes, then we found some patterns in the codes to come up and to generate three main themes, that is positive traits, negative traits, and ethnicity. After generating the initial themes, we are ready to move to the next step of the reflexive thematic analysis process, which is reviewing potential themes. To review our potential themes, we have to actually go back. First, we read our research topic and research question so that we can review the themes and see whether they fit with our research questions. For this case, our research topic is Young People, Identity and the Media, a study of conceptions of self-identity among youth in Southern England. I had these research questions. What is the perception of the research participants about their ethnicity? Self-perception among youth in Southern England. What is the opinion of youth in Southern England about how other people see them? Now, if you look at my research questions, you will see my research questions talk so much about perception. So if we look at the positive traits here, we can see our research questions. The first research question, what is the perception of the research participants about their ethnicity, talks about the theme of ethnicity. So this theme of ethnicity already answers my first research question. So we can say this is a complete theme. Let's look at this second theme, negative traits. If we look at our research question, what is the prevalent self-perception among the youth in Southern England? And then, what is the opinion of youth in Southern England about how other people see them? So these negative traits do not directly answer our research questions, okay? The first thing we can do is to rename or review this theme and revise this theme. And let's call this negative perceptions. And then we are going to have the next one. Remember, we are reviewing and revising our themes, which is the fourth step of reflexive thematic analysis. Now we have negative perception and positive perception. We can see these themes still do not answer our research question. We want the themes to answer our research question of what is the prevalent self-perception among youth in Southern England? What is the opinion of youth in Southern England about how other people see them? So we need something about self-perception, which will be both positive and negative, and other people's perception, which will be both positive and negative. And I want to create a new theme called self-perception. Okay, and I want to create another one called other people's perception. Okay, what does this mean? That for the negative perception, it can be either self-perception or other people's perception. Okay, and for the positive, it can be either self-perception or other people's perception. Now I have created the self-perception and the other people's perception as the themes that answer our research question. Under the self-perception, I want to create a new code and call it negative, and I want to create another and call it positive. Okay, this negative and positive, I want to drag them and drop them into the self-perception theme. Okay, what I'll simply do is to put the negative self-perceptions into the negative code and the positive self-perceptions into the positive code. Okay, I will also do the same for the other people's perception. So other people's perception can be positive and can also be negative. Okay, new code can also be negative. Remember, we are reviewing our themes and we are simply trying to fit the themes we generated earlier into our research question. So this negative and positive will be in other people's perception. Other people's perception can be negative and positive, and self-perception can be negative or positive. So we are going to borrow from this. Let's start with self-perception. We are not coding anymore. We are just reviewing our themes and reorganizing them. Let's look at a code like temperamental. Okay, so let's read this to see whether it's self-perception. Already we know it's a negative perception. You can see this theme here. So we want to see whether it's self or other people's perception. Okay, you said you have a temper. Yeah, so we can already see that that's a self-perception, this temperamental that is said by Michelle. So temperamental, we can drag this and drop it. Remember, we are reassigning it into a negative self-perception, and you can see temperamental comes under negative self-perception. This is how you review themes. Let's look at selfish. We double click to see the excerpt, the Paris Hilton one, because I can imagine her to be quite selfish. So remember, this interviewee called Karen picked Paris Hilton because I can imagine her to be quite selfish. So that means the interviewee sees herself as selfish. So again, that is a negative self-perception. I want to look at lazy and woman, image of a woman wearing a tiara. I like people to run around for me because I don't like to do a lot for myself. Now, that's a self-perception, obviously, and it's lazy. It's a negative self-perception. Let's look at emotional again. I would have put how I see myself to go into more details like my feelings, that I can quite be an emotional person. So Michelle classifies herself as emotional. Again, that's a negative self-perception. Let's go to examples of positive perceptions. And again, I want to look at talkative. Yeah, so the phone that says I talk a lot. You can see, already we can see that's a positive self-perception. So I'm going to go and classify all these codes under positive perceptions into either self-perception or other people's perception. Okay? So for other people, you can see already I have positive and negative, and for self, I have positive and negative. This is how we review themes to make them to answer or to fit in our research question. Remember, I've not changed my themes. I've just reviewed them and reorganized them in a way that it becomes easy for me to answer my two research questions, or my research questions of what is the prevalent self-perception among the youth in Southern England, and what is the opinion of youth in Southern England about how other people see them. So when you reassign and move the codes, if you right click and click on aggregate coding, you can see like self-perception, I have 3 files already and 7 references. That's how you review the code. Finally, after I've finished, of course, the positive perceptions will be left with nothing. So I'm going to delete that. And then the negative perceptions will also be left with nothing. So I'm going to delete that because I will reallocate all the codes to the self-perception, either to negative or positive, other people's perception, negative or positive, and then we'll have our third theme, which is ethnicity. So that's how we perform the 4th step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is reviewing potential themes. Now I have the final themes here, and I am ready to move to the 5th step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is defining and naming themes. You can see I won't do much to define and name themes because I already did that in the 4th step. Sometimes you can do that in the 4th step. You can see my themes are self-perception, other people's perception. Under self-perception, we have positive and negative. Under other people's perception, we also have positive and negative. And if I open there, you can see self-perception positive, values ethnic culture, talkative, sweet, supportive towards others, sports, fun, religious, powerful, playful. You can see that this answers my research question of what is the prevalent self-perception among the youth in Southern England. We can answer that research question right now. You can see positive has 5 files and 23 references. Negative has 4 files and 11 references. So the prevalent self-perception among the youth in Southern England is a positive perception. Again, the 3rd question, what is the opinion of youth in Southern England about how other people see them? You can see most of the youth believe that files, we can see negative 3 and 4 references. Most of the interviewed youth believe that other people perceive them negatively. So that's the way I have named my 3 themes, and we have ethnicity here which describes the different ethnicities of the interviewed participants. So that is the 5th step of reflexive thematic analysis. We are ready to move to the 6th and final step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is producing the report. To produce the reports, you might need to export different charts and visuals from NVivo. First, I want to show how to export charts that show demographic data in NVivo, which we will need in our final data analysis report. We go to cases, then we click case classifications, and then I have the name here, which represents the attributes I imported at the beginning of the tutorial. I imported some attributes here. So if you look at David here, and I click on the plus sign, let me say I want to draw a chart of the different ages of the interviewed participants. What I'll do is click on the plus sign of the participant, then come to the age attribute and right click. You will see a pop-up comes up where it asks me chart cases by attribute value and hierarchy chart of attribute value combinations. I want a chart, so I click chart, and you can see we have a chart of the different participants. We can already see that age, 5 participants were 13 years and only 1 participant was 14 years. But this chart has so many elements that I do not want. It has unassigned and not applicable. So you right click on the chart and go to select data. I come to the x-axis attribute. The x-axis is the horizontal line. I want to click on all attributes values except unassigned and not applicable. I click OK. You can see unassigned and not applicable will disappear. I right click on the chart and go to edit labels, and I can edit the chart, like the top label, name, age. No, let's call this age of participants. Age of participants. And again, on the number of matching cases, I want to call this number of participants. Number of participants. Again, I click OK. Number of participants, age of participants. That's how you create charts for your different forms of demographic information in NVivo. Remember, you press Ctrl Shift and E to export this chart, and you can export it as age of participants. Let's save that one. If we go to our folder here and we double click, you can see this is the chart we just created. Age of participants, number of participants 13 years 5, 14 years 1. So that's how you draw charts in NVivo. There's another thing you can export in NVivo, which is the initial codes table. I want to go to where we have initial codes. Let me close this and this. And we have these initial codes. When we are writing the report in NVivo, especially when we are using the reflexive thematic analysis approach, it's important to have a table that shows our initial codes, our initial themes, and our final themes. So to export this, just go to where you have the folder for your initial codes. We are in the codes section, and then come to the codes and control all. Control A on your computer, right click and go to export and select export list, and let's see what will happen. So let's save that. Let's go to our folder, and this is what we just exported. You can see these are our initial codes. Now these details, we can delete all this, can clean it up by deleting all that. We can see NVivo has details, date and time of coding, you delete all that. Now these are all the initial codes, and you can come and highlight this and copy paste this table as the initial codes in your data analysis report. That's how you export tables from NVivo. You just highlight and then right click, export, then you go to export list. Another table we can export is our initial themes. Our initial themes here, again the same process, just Control A, export, export list, and save. And you can see if we open that, we get our initial themes here. So on the far left, you can see if I try to click on 2, you can see it expands to all the codes under every theme. If I go to 3, all the subcodes under every sub theme. So we have themes, sub themes, code. These tables you can always copy and paste them in your final data analysis report. So that's how you export different forms of tables in NVivo. Another thing you can export in NVivo after conducting your reflexive thematic analysis and coming up with your final themes is matrix coding query. So let's go to the explore button on NVivo, up there on the explore button, up there on the menu, and I want to select matrix coding query. You can see there is a dialog box that opens here. Now I want to select files. Who are my participants? I double click there. I can see the different files. Let's see whether they are all selected. It's okay, they are all selected. So I've selected all my participants in the rows section. Remember, the rows are the ones that go across. Then on the other hand, you can see here, I also have a columns section. Not much visible, but this is the columns section. Let me push this a little bit. This is the columns section. Now on the columns, with the matrix coding query, I want to show what each participant said about specific themes. So I select the 3 themes and click OK. Then I go to this button, run query. I click on it, and you can see the amount of information that each participant provided for each code. Now I like coming up here and setting my table as column percentage. You can also set your table as words coded. For example, you can see for self-perception, we have so many words coded for Michelle and no word coded for Richard. I was not able to do coding for Richard, that's why we have 0 there. But you can see Michelle has 238 words coded for self-perception, and Kashif has only 73. And if we convert, we click up here on column percentage, we can see the percentages also. So I like the column percentage to represent the volume of words coded for each participant under each theme. So we have self-perception, other people's perception, and ethnicity. Again, you can right click on this table and go to cell shading, and we give it a color, green, yellow, and red. You can also give it a color like cell shading, blue, and white, and you can see it's like a heat map here. So it shows the number of words coded for each participant related to a given theme. For example, we can see Michelle or David says so much about other people's perception compared to people like Seipan or someone like Karen. So you can also export this table by clicking Ctrl+Shift+E, and you can save that table in a specific folder, and this is how our table will look like after we export it. You can come and fix total here to give direction to anyone reading it, and write 100% so that people will know we are reading from the top to the bottom. 100%, that means that we are reading from the top to the bottom and not across. This represents the volume the volume of words coded for each participant related to a specific theme. You can use the matrix coding query especially in your analysis. Another visual that we can export from NVivo is hierarchy charts I've drawn this many times before. And again, if you right click on one of our themes and you go to visualize, then we can select hierarchy chart of codes, and then we'll have all the codes under self-perception. And this is a bit sophisticated, but we can go and click more inside and see. For example, this is the positive self-perceptions of the interviewed participant, and we can also click on the negative and export this. This represents the negative self-perception of the research participants. You can click Ctrl+Shift+E and you can always save that hierarchy chart, and let's see it. You can see this is the hierarchy chart. We exported it as a PNG, and you can use this in your data analysis report. So those are the different types of visualizations that we are going to include in our data analysis report after conducting reflexive thematic analysis. Now, I have taken time to compile a final report after conducting the reflexive thematic analysis. This is the 6th step of reflexive thematic analysis, which is producing a report, a data analysis report. So in these areas, I've just indicated what I would include, but this is where my report begins. So I begin with the data analysis section, which describes how I conducted the data analysis. For example, let me just read this paragraph. To accomplish the research objective, a reflexive thematic analysis approach was adopted to analyze the qualitative data obtained from interviewing 6 teenagers from 3 different schools across southern England. According to Braun and Clarke 2020, reflexive thematic analysis is an easily accessible and theoretically flexible interpretative approach to the analysis of qualitative data, which will facilitate the identification and analysis of patterns or specific themes in a given dataset. In this study, the researcher relied on NVivo 14, a well-established qualitative data analysis tool, to conduct a reflexive thematic analysis. The reflective thematic analysis process included the following 6 steps in analyzing qualitative data. So I've included the steps of reflexive thematic analysis and the defense. So this data analysis section provides or highlights all the steps I took in conducting reflexive thematic analysis. It's important to include this in your report because it's like providing evidence of how you conducted your analysis. So you can see the initial table that we exported in Excel. I have imported it here, and you can see these are the initial codes I had. Then we have the themes that I generated, and then we have another table here containing the themes and codes combined that I generated. You can see after exporting the tables, NVivo provides you with the number of files and references, which shows that you actually took time to code your data. This is evidence that your supervisor will check to see whether you coded your data. And this is one of the main reasons why people use NVivo, because of this documentation of your coding and reflexive thematic analysis process. So you can see I've included all the tables here that I exported from NVivo. I have also included a section of description of the participants. You can see I have described the participants by gender. We exported that chart. By age, we also exported such a chart, and by school attended. So that's how you use your charts. Again, I have another table here in the start of my description of my results. So my results basically highlight the main themes that emerged, and for each theme I provide a table to substantiate. So you can see like this is the theme of ethnicity, and this table comes first, and then I start presenting the data. The interviewed teenagers provided diverse descriptions of their ethnicity, with one participant identifying as white. You can see the areas in italics represent the various excerpts, which are the real words that the participants used in the interview. I'm going to provide a link for this report, which you can take your time to read and use it as a reference when you are conducting your qualitative data analysis and writing your report. This is a good example of a data analysis report that you will get after you conduct reflexive thematic analysis. So you can see I use a lot of tables to break the text. I also use a hierarchy chart here. This one represents positive self-perception of the participants. Then we have the italics represents the excerpts, and then we have another hierarchy chart, another table, and finally in the appendix section we have a code book including my codes. If I was doing this and submitting this to my supervisor, I could have added descriptions here on each code. So to add descriptions on your codes, you just go on your codes or themes, you just go right click on the code properties and add the descriptions at this area, and those descriptions will show up in the code book after you export the code book. To export the code book, you just go to share area. Up there, go to share, go to export, then export code book. I'm going to deselect all these because I don't need them. Deselect. I'm just left with the codes. I click OK, and NVivo will export my code book. As you can see here, this is the code book I've included in the data analysis report. So that's how you export your code book. Again, this is the complete data analysis report after conducting the reflexive thematic analysis. Again, I will include the link to this data analysis report, and I will also provide the link to articles supporting all the articles that I used to research the reflexive thematic analysis approach in the description. I will also provide the resources that I exported from NVivo in order to come up with my data analysis report, such as Excel sheets, matrix coding, tables, and all those resources. So I'll provide the different links in the description, so make sure you go and check them out. Thank you.
Remember, if you're stuck with your project, I offer done for you data analysis services with NVivo 14. I also provide one-on-one consulting services. Make sure you write me an email or talk to me on Messenger. Find details on how to reach me in the description. Thank you.